My harsh words to my struggling BIL at my baby shower landed him in the hospital. As my due date approaches, family drama threatens my health. I, 32F, have been married to my husband Arthur, 34M, for 5 years now. We've been trying for a baby for the last 3 years, and it hasn't been an easy road. At first, we thought it would happen naturally, but after a year of no success, we started to worry. We went through a battery of tests, and while everything came back normal, we still struggled to conceive. It was a stressful time for us, filled with disappointment and frustration. But we supported each other through it all, and finally, after countless ovulation kits and perfectly timed attempts, I'm pregnant with our first child. Last weekend, we had a baby shower to celebrate with our family and friends. I was nervous about the event because I knew my brother-in-law, Eddie, 38M, and his wife Sarah, 36F, would be there. They've been struggling with infertility for years, and it's always been a sensitive topic in our family. Eddie and Arthur have always been close, despite their 4-year age gap. They grew up in a tight-knit family, and Eddie was always the protective older brother. He was there for Arthur's first day of school, taught him how to ride a bike, and even helped him prepare for his first date. When Arthur introduced me to his family, Eddie was the first to welcome me with open arms. Eddie and Sarah met in high school and have been together ever since. They got married young, right after college, and everyone expected them to start a family right away. Eddie had always talked about wanting a big family, just like the one he grew up in. But as the years went by and no baby arrived, we all started to realize that something was wrong. They've gone through multiple rounds of IVF, but nothing has worked so far. It's been really hard on them, especially Eddie. He's always been vocal about how much he wants to be a father. I remember the day they told us about their first failed IVF attempt. Eddie broke down in tears, something I'd never seen him do before. It was heartbreaking to watch. Now, I understand that infertility is a sensitive issue, and I've always tried to be supportive of Eddie and Sarah. When they first started treatments, Arthur and I would often babysit for our other friends so Eddie and Sarah could join us for child-free outings. We tried to be there for them through each disappointment, offering a shoulder to cry on or just a distraction when things got too overwhelming. But lately, Eddie's behavior has been getting on my nerves. Every family gathering, he finds a way to bring up their struggles and how unfair life is. It's like he can't be happy for anyone else because he's so focused on his own problems. Last Christmas, when Arthur's younger sister announced her pregnancy, Eddie left the room and didn't come back for an hour. At Arthur's birthday party, he spent the whole night talking about their latest failed treatment instead of celebrating his brother. I've tried to be patient, reminding myself of the pain they're going through. But it's getting harder and harder to sympathize when Eddie seems determined to make every event about his struggles. Arthur has tried talking to him privately, but Eddie just gets defensive and accuses Arthur of not understanding because we're having a baby. At my baby shower, Eddie was at it again. We had decorated the backyard with balloons and streamers, and my best friend had made a beautiful cake with "Welcome, baby" written on it. Just as we were about to open gifts, Eddie started talking about how he and Sarah had been to another fertility appointment last week, and how the doctor said their chances were getting slimmer. Everyone got quiet and awkward, and I could see my friends looking uncomfortable. I tried to change the subject, asking my mom about her recent vacation, but Eddie kept going on and on about how he might never get to experience the joy of being a parent. He started listing all the things he'd never get to do, teaching his kid to ride a bike, watching school plays, coaching Little League. That's when I snapped. I told him, "Eddie, maybe you should consider that not having kids might be for the best. You're so obsessed with becoming a father that you can't even be happy for other people. Is that really the kind of parent you want to be?" The room went silent. Eddie looked like I'd slapped him, and Sarah burst into tears. My husband tried to smooth things over, saying I didn't mean it and that the pregnancy was making me emotional. But the damage was done. Eddie and Sarah left early, and the rest of the shower was tense and awkward. My friends tried to lighten the mood, but everyone was shaken by what had happened. After everyone left, Arthur told me I was way out of line. He reminded me of all the times Eddie had been there for him, for us. He said Eddie is going through a tough time and I should be more understanding. But I don't think it's fair for Eddie to rain on everyone else's parade just because he's struggling. I pointed out to Arthur how Eddie's behavior had been affecting everyone, not just me, but Arthur insisted that family should stick together no matter what. My parents called me later and said I was cruel to Eddie. They think I should apologize. My mom reminded me of how excited Eddie was when Arthur and I got married, how he gave the best man speech talking about how he couldn't wait to be an uncle. She said Eddie's always been a family man and that his current behavior is just a result of his pain. But I feel like someone needed to tell Eddie the truth about his behavior. Yes, infertility is painful, but it doesn't give him the right to make everyone else miserable. I'm worried about how this will affect my relationship with Arthur and his family going forward, but I also don't think I should have to apologize for standing up for myself and my baby. I'd over what I said? Update 1. It's been 2 weeks since the baby shower incident, and things have only gotten worse. I thought maybe after some time had passed, everyone would calm down and see my side of things. Boy, was I wrong. The day after my last post, Arthur sat me down for a serious talk. He told me that while he understood I was frustrated with Eddie, what I said was completely unacceptable. He explained that Eddie had confided in him about feeling depressed and considering therapy, but was too ashamed to actually go through with it. Apparently, in their family, seeking help for mental health issues was seen as a sign of weakness. Their father had always taught them to tough it out when things got hard. Arthur said my comments at the shower had pushed Eddie over the edge, and now he was refusing to leave the house or talk to anyone. He'd called in sick to work for the past week and wasn't answering anyone's calls or messages. Sarah had reached out to Arthur in desperation, not knowing how to help her husband. I felt a twinge of guilt hearing this, but I still believed Eddie needed to hear the harsh truth. I told Arthur that maybe this would be the wake-up call Eddie needed to get help and stop wallowing in self-pity. I pointed out how Eddie's behavior had been affecting everyone around him for months, maybe even years. Arthur just shook his head and said I didn't understand the gravity of the situation. A few days later, Sarah called me. I expected her to yell at me, but instead, she was eerily calm. She told me that Eddie had been admitted to the hospital for severe depression and suicidal thoughts. Apparently, he'd had a breakdown at home, smashing pictures of his family and talking about how he was a failure as a man and a brother. Sarah had to call an ambulance when she found him unresponsive after taking too many sleeping pills. Sarah said that while Eddie's issues had been building for a long time, my words at the shower were the final straw. She explained that Eddie had always tied his self-worth to the idea of being a father. Growing up, he'd been the one to take care of Arthur when their parents were working late. He practically raised his younger cousins during summers at their grandparents' farm. Being a caregiver was a huge part of his identity, and not being able to have children had shattered his sense of self. Sarah then told me that she and Eddie didn't want any contact with me for the foreseeable future, including after the baby was born. She said they couldn't bear to be around our child knowing they might never have one of their own. The pain in her voice was palpable, and for the first time, I truly realized the depth of their suffering. I was shocked. I never meant for things to go this far. I tried to apologize, but Sarah cut me off, saying it was too little, too late. She hung up, leaving me feeling confused and guilty. The situation has caused a huge rift in our family. Arthur's parents are furious with me and have said they won't be coming to visit when the baby is born unless I make things right with Eddie and Sarah. They've always been traditional and family-oriented, and in their eyes, I've committed an unforgivable sin by hurting their eldest son. My own parents are disappointed and keep urging me to apologize, saying I need to be the bigger person. My mom reminded me of how Eddie had helped us move into our first apartment, spending an entire weekend painting and assembling furniture. She said that's the kind of person Eddie really is, and that I need to look past his recent behavior and remember the good times. Arthur has been sleeping in the guest room for the past week. He says he needs space to process everything and figure out how to move forward. We've barely spoken except about practical matters like doctor's appointments or household chores. The distance between us is palpable, and I'm terrified that this incident might have irreparably damaged our marriage. I'm 30 weeks pregnant now, and instead of enjoying this time, I'm stressed and isolated. The nursery is half finished, with boxes of unassembled furniture and piles of unwashed baby clothes serving as a constant reminder of the joy that's been overshadowed by this family drama. I've stopped attending my prenatal yoga classes because I can't bear to be around other happy expectant mothers. I still believe that Eddie's behavior was inappropriate, but I'm beginning to see that my response was not the right way to handle it. I don't know how to fix this mess I've created. The weight of everyone's disappointment and anger is crushing, and I'm worried about how all this stress might be affecting my baby. I want to make things right, but I don't know if it's even possible at this point. Update 2. It's been a month since my last update, and things have taken an unexpected turn. I'm now 34 weeks pregnant, and the stress of the situation has started affecting my health. At my last checkup, my doctor warned me about high blood pressure and the risks it poses to the baby. She asked about any recent stressors in my life, and I broke down crying in her office, telling her everything that had happened. The doctor was concerned and suggested I start monitoring my blood pressure at home. She also recommended I try to reduce stress as much as possible, even suggesting I take early maternity leave from work. I was reluctant at first, not wanting to let my team down, but after a particularly scary checkup where she mentioned the possibility of early delivery if my blood pressure didn't stabilize, I agreed. That night, I had a small scare when I noticed some spotting. Panicked, I called for Arthur, who rushed me to the hospital. Thankfully, everything turned out to be fine, but the fear of potentially losing our baby shook both of us to our core. As we sat in the hospital room, waiting for the all-clear from the doctor, Arthur finally came back to our bedroom. He said that while he was still upset about what happened, he didn't want to risk our baby's health. We had a long talk about everything. I admitted that I had handled the situation with Eddie poorly and that I regretted my words. I explained how the stress of the pregnancy, combined with years of tiptoeing around Eddie's feelings, had finally pushed me to my breaking point. Arthur listened patiently, and for the first time in weeks, I felt like he was really hearing me. Arthur helped me see how my pregnancy hormones and the stress of planning the shower might have contributed to my outburst, but he also made it clear that it wasn't an excuse for my behavior. He shared how torn he felt between his love for me and our baby, and his loyalty to his brother. We both cried, finally letting out all the emotions we'd been bottling up. With Arthur's encouragement, I decided to write a heartfelt letter to Eddie and Sarah. I spent days drafting and redrafting, wanting to strike the right balance between apologizing and explaining my perspective. In the end, I apologized sincerely for my hurtful words and acknowledged the pain I'd caused them. I explained that while I still felt Eddie's behavior at the shower was inappropriate, my response was cruel and uncalled for. I shared how I'd always admired Eddie's caring nature and how much his support had meant to Arthur and me over the years. I told them I would understand if they couldn't forgive me, but that I hoped we could eventually move past this for the sake of our family. A week after sending the letter, Sarah called. Her voice was hesitant, but not as cold as it had been during our last conversation. She told me that Eddie was doing better with medication and therapy, but that my words had deeply hurt him. She said they had read my letter together and appreciated my apology, but they needed more time before they could consider rebuilding our relationship. Sarah shared that Eddie was starting to realize how his behavior had been affecting others. His therapist was helping him work through his grief and find healthier ways to cope with their infertility struggles. She said it was a long road ahead, but she was hopeful that Eddie would eventually be able to find joy in other aspects of his life again. Meanwhile, the family is still divided. Arthur's parents have softened slightly, saying they'll visit after the baby is born, but things are still tense. During a recent phone call, Arthur's mom expressed her disappointment in how I had handled the situation, but also admitted that they should have done more to help Eddie deal with his depression earlier. It was a small step, but it felt like progress. My parents are relieved that I apologized but warned me that it might take a long time for things to get back to normal. They've been my rock through all of this, coming over to help finish the nursery and making sure I'm taking care of myself. My mom even organized a small, intimate baby shower with just my closest friends to replace the one that had ended so disastrously. As my due date approaches, I'm trying to focus on preparing for the baby's arrival. Arthur and I are working on communicating better and supporting each other through this difficult time. We've started attending couples therapy to work through the issues this situation has brought up in our relationship. It's not easy, but we're both committed to making things work for the sake of our family. I'm still hopeful that eventually, we can heal as a family, but I know it will take time and effort from everyone involved. For now, I'm focusing on staying healthy for my baby and rebuilding the trust and closeness with Arthur that was damaged by this whole ordeal. Update 3. It's been 2 months since my last update, and our baby boy, Ethan, was born 3 weeks ago. The birth was difficult due to complications from my high blood pressure, but thankfully, both Ethan and I are healthy now. The moment they placed him in my arms, all the stress and drama of the past few months seemed to fade away. Arthur was by my side throughout the entire labor, holding my hand and encouraging me. Despite all we've been through, seeing him with our son has reminded me of why I fell in love with him in the first place. The arrival of Ethan has brought some unexpected changes to our family situation. A week after we brought him home, we received a surprise visit from Eddie and Sarah. They came with a gift for the baby, a handmade quilt that Sarah had apparently been working on since she heard about my pregnancy, long before the baby shower incident. The gesture touched me deeply, especially knowing how painful it must have been for her to make it. Eddie looked much better than the last time I'd seen him. The haunted look in his eyes was gone, replaced by a calmness I hadn't seen in years. He asked if they could talk, and we all sat down in the living room, with Ethan sleeping peacefully in his bassinet nearby. Eddie explained that therapy had helped him realize how his behavior had been affecting others. He apologized for constantly bringing up his struggles at inappropriate times and admitted that he had been so consumed by his own pain that he couldn't see how it was impacting those around him. He shared that he had started volunteering at a local youth center, mentoring teenagers, and how it had given him a new perspective on what it means to make a difference in a child's life. I apologized again for my hurtful words at the baby shower, and we had a long, honest conversation about everything that had happened. It was uncomfortable at times, but it felt like we were finally clearing the air. We talked about how we could support each other better going forward, acknowledging that while Eddie and Sarah's pain was real, it shouldn't overshadow other family events. Sarah shared that they had decided to take a break from fertility treatments and were considering adoption. She said that seeing Ethan had reminded them of why they wanted to be parents in the first place, to love and nurture a child, regardless of biology. The way she looked at Ethan, with a mixture of love and longing, made me realize that her maternal instincts were just as strong as any biological mother's. While things aren't completely back to normal, we're making progress. Eddie and Sarah have visited a few times to see Ethan, and the interactions have been positive. There's still some awkwardness, especially when Eddie holds Ethan. I can see the conflicting emotions on his face, joy at being an uncle mixed with the pain of his own unfulfilled dreams. But he's making an effort to be present and engaged, asking about Ethan's routines and even offering to babysit when we're ready. Arthur's parents have also come around, doting on their new grandson and making an effort to be civil with me. During their first visit, Arthur's mom pulled me aside and apologized for how she had reacted initially. She explained that seeing Eddie struggle for so long had made her overprotective, but she realized that pushing me away wasn't the solution. We're taking small steps to rebuild our relationship, bonding over Ethan and sharing family stories. The whole experience has changed our family dynamics in ways I never expected. Arthur and Eddie seem closer than ever, with Eddie often calling to check in on his little brother and offer advice, sometimes wanted, sometimes not. I've noticed Arthur being more open about his feelings, something he struggled with before all this happened. As for me, I've learned a lot from this experience about empathy, the power of words, and the importance of family. I'm more conscious now of how my actions and words can affect others, even when I don't intend them to. I'm trying to be more patient and understanding, not just with Eddie and Sarah, but with everyone in my life. Motherhood is challenging, especially with all the family drama we've been through, but it's also incredibly rewarding. Watching Ethan grow and change every day puts everything into perspective. Yes, we've been through a difficult time, but seeing my son smile or hearing his little coos makes it all worth it. I know we still have a long way to go in fully healing our family relationships. There are still moments of tension, unsaid words, and careful tiptoeing around certain subjects. But I'm hopeful that we can continue to grow stronger as a family. Eddie and Sarah's journey isn't over, and I know there will be more challenges ahead as they navigate their path to parenthood. But this time, I'm committed to being there for them in whatever way I can, just as they're here for us now.